Yeah.
Robert's not there yet. All right, we'll give him a minute.
You're supposed to say it's really.
Call to order this meeting of the Hartford Selectboard on Tuesday, November 7th, 2023 at 6:01 p.m. This meeting is a hybrid meeting, which means that some or all of the public body is meeting remotely and some are meeting physically in a previously noticed location where the public may attend to observe, listen, and participate contemporaneously. One member of this public body or other staff is present at the location to ensure the public can participate if desired. Please note that while we will strive to provide means for those attending remotely to participate in the public comment period, there may be technical difficulties or reasons that otherwise prevent or interrupt remote public participation. Therefore, it's important to note that the open meeting law only ensures the public's right to participate and comment at a public meeting by attending at a designated physical location as posted in the notice and agenda. If a member of the public or of the public body has technical difficulties accessing this meeting remotely, please alert us by email at selectboard@hartford-vt.org. In the event of a technical difficulty that cannot be resolved, we may continue the meeting if necessary to a time and place certain. Please note that all votes taken during this meeting that are not unanimous will be done by roll call vote in accordance with the law. It's required by the open meeting law. Let's start the meeting by taking a roll call attendance of all members participating in the meeting. And have those members attending remotely identify themselves and let us know if they can hear and be heard. So, Lanny.
Here.
Rocket?
So he texted to say Zoom was forcing him to update, so he would be on momentarily, but it's not. I'll let you know when he's on.
Okay, yeah, because we could have a little. Allie?
I'm here.
Mary?
I am here.
Dan?
I am here and I can hear you.
Thank you. Please just identify yourself.
Dan Fraser, Select Board Member, attending remote.
Thank you. Kim?
Here, and Rocket is just being brought over to panelists now.
Okay, I'm here, and so when Rocket comes over, we will.
And who are you?
It's gonna be our bit.
Okay, Rocket. Looks like.
Rocket, if you can identify yourself and let us know if you can hear us.
Hello, everyone. I'm here.
Thank you, Rocket. Please just
Sorry
identify
for the delay.
your name. Please just identify yourself.
Rocket, Select Board
All
of
right.
White River.
Thank you. All right. So we're here.
Can you
So
hear
the
me,
next
Rocket?
item, yep. So the next item is the Pledge of Allegiance. Would anyone like to lead us?
Sure.
Okay.
I pledge allegiance to the flag, United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Thank you very much. Order of agenda. I think we're good. So we'll move to public comments. Anyone in the room comment publicly? I don't see anyone here, so we will go to Zoom.
There are no hands up at the moment.
Okay, we will end public comment and we will move to budget review. So our first item is the fire FY25 proposed budget presentation, and we've got Scott coming in and again. So whenever you're ready.
All righty, good evening, everyone. Good evening. Tonight, I'm here to present the FY25 budget for the fire department. It is account number 221 in your budget books, and I have it beginning on page 26 of the most recently revised budget book. I'd like to start off just with presenting our mission, vision, and core values of the fire department. Since that mission and that vision kind of drives the organization and drives how we do budgeting and thinking about what innovative practices, partnerships, and programming we can provide to the community. The fire department's coming up on its renewal for fire department accreditation. As you know, we received it back in 2019. In 2024, it expires. So over the summer, we moved from a accredited agency back to a candidate agency. And we are beginning the reaccreditation process, which includes a redevelopment of our community-driven strategic plan, our self-assessment, and our standards of cover document, which are all going through rewrites and reprocessing. We recently hired a firm to help lead us in a community-driven strategic plan, which will drive probably a new mission, new values, and new vision for the organization. So looking forward to that in the coming year. But hopefully early in the spring of 24, we can have a visit by a peer assessment team and they can review our documents in our agency for reaccreditation in the fall of 24. This is the current staffing, authorized staffing in the fire department, from fire chief all the way down to our call firefighters. Basically, you have 30 full-time employees within the fire department. Some that are two that full-time handle fire prevention services, an administrative assistant for me and my right-hand lady in the fire department. We have the public safety mechanic located in fire that works on both fire and police equipment. The deputy fire chief of training and operations handles the full-time staff and provides training for the call firefighters as well. And the current design shows 2 stations where we have an officer assigned to each location during a 24-hour shift period. 4 shifts rotate over those 24-hour periods, and we have 4 that are slated at station 1. So our minimum staffing is 5 on duty at all times, 24 hours a day in the operations section of the department. And each shift is currently staffed at 6. And currently we hold 2 firefighter vacancies that have not been filled as of yet, although we're making some interviews and hope to have some announcements soon. And then we have an anticipated vacancy happening in February of next year. The next slide just shows shows our current projected call volume for this year, and then a historical call volume of emergencies that have occurred in the town of Hartford. As you can see, we had a real big bump in 21 and 20 when we were dealing with COVID, and we're kind of normalizing. But basically, the fire department on average responds to about 7 911 emergencies per day. If you project it out over time, and it's about 211 calls a month. That's currently what the average is. So that's what our projected is. So this year, we'll start with the wage section. So this is a cumulative calculation of the wages that appear in your budget book. It compensates 30 full-time employees and 5 part-time employees. Some other differences that you'll see in this is the impact from the compensation study, as raises were given to meet what the compensation study findings were. It also projects wage increases for the FY25 budget, which is a union contracted raise of total of 4%, which is a combination of step and COLA, and the same with the non-union personnel. The other major change that you'll see on the salary line is that we just shifted the amount that was in the police department budget into fire to make it more sense. He falls under my supervision, and he's still doing the work for both agencies. It's just his entire salary now shows up in the fire department. The mechanic, yes. It also shows the holiday pay, the contractual holiday pay we give to the bargaining unit members, and then overtime as well. So from the current budget to the projected budget, we're seeing an increase of $285,000.
Can I ask a quick question?
Sure.
Is everybody capable of taking overtime, everybody in the whole department?
The only employees that are eligible for overtime are the union employees.
Okay.
So it would be all the firefighters that are on shift, the mechanic, and the fire marshal's office.
Okay.
So the 2 that are in the fire marshal's office. Myself, the deputy chief, and the admin assistant are exempt.
Okay.
Next slide is just going over the increase in health, the HRA contribution, dental, and other insurances. And this is for 30 full-time employees. Now, granted, there are some that do not take health insurance, and there are some that just take the buyout that's offered by the town, but that's all figured into that piece. So we projected a 14.4% increase in health insurance and a 4% increase in dental coverage, which generated about a $70,000 increase to the insurances line of the fire department budget. So total changes in the budget from bottom to top. And just to clarify, the bracketed $76,000. So that number does not appear in the actual budget from last year. That was an encumbrance of salary savings that we have on a PO that supplemented some of our purchases from the previous year. So in calculating what the actual budget was, I added the $76,000 into that line to come up with a $4,363,982. So that's all that's referencing. So the increases this year are, we just went over the increase in salaries, benefits, retirees. There's some reduction in workers' comp and an increase in retirement, as now we're offering Group D retirement to employees. So that generated about a total of $422,848, and the remaining balance is made up of the operational account, generating a total of a $548,196 increase over the previous year's budget. Some highlights of things we are proposing to accomplish in the FY25 budget is over the last year, I've hired a considerable amount of new people that were hired at a relatively basic level of education. So the time is here for me to provide some of the technical rescue training to get them up to our basic qualifications. And one of them is to host a high-angle rescue course for staff. We have that in there at $15,000. That's not counting the overtime associated with it. That would come directly from the overtime budget. Some changes to the phone system and to bring the Station 2 site onto the same First Light internet service that we have at Town Hall and at Public Safety. That's in there for $5,000. $15,000 replaces about 3 radios annually for the fire department. These are the portable radios that the firefighters carry. We carry usually 15,000 annually and to do 3 at a time. We're looking to replace the tires, do some paint work, recovery work to one of the current existing pieces of apparatus. I have that in there for $14,900. Also, we carry funds to replace mobile data terminals that are in the fire apparatus and ambulances and all the admin vehicles at $5,000. We have the full rental for the trailer for the next budgeted fiscal year. Whether or not we move in other directions, they could be, we might not expend all of that, but we have to budget for a full year of rental fees. Replace PPE, and this is numerous kinds. As we hire new employees, we have to outfit them with protective clothing. This provides us an avenue to do such at $10,000. Assorted rope rescue and technical rescue equipment. Rope ages out over time. You don't want members to be using unsafe safety rope and do rappelling with, so we time out and replace that over time. And then finally, the largest item that we're requesting this year is the replacement of 2 cardiac monitor defibrillators that we're carrying in the ambulance. We currently have 3 LifePak 15s, which are cardiac monitors, defibrillators. They run a full 12 lead EKG. It's what the bread and butter of paramedic operations in an ambulance. They're about $35,000 to $40,000 a piece. We've done very well on, if you look in the medical line of the budget, you'll see we pay for a service contract with Stryker, and Stryker is the parent company. And our service contracts have allowed us to extend the life of a 2010 and 2011 unit up until next year. At their last annual update, we were informed by the service technician and their sales individual that they're no longer supporting the version 1 software that's on both those units, and that they would need to be replaced. So whether or not we go with LifePak or not, it's high enough so we have to do an RFP. There are other manufacturers out there, but they're all in that kind of ballpark.
Can I interrupt you for a second, Scott?
Yeah.
What does this particular cardiac monitor have that a lower priced monitor would not, as far as abilities for a paramedic in the back of the rig to be able to do their job?
So I'm not sure you could get a lower price unit to do what we need it to do. So right now the units allow you to do a 12 lead EKG, which allows us to recognize if you're having a myocardial infarction, a heart attack. It has automatic STEMI recognition. So sometimes we have the ambulance that doesn't have a paramedic on board, but they're all trained in utilizing the equipment. It automatically captures their heart rhythm at the time, and it's hooked to a cloud. So immediately it transmits up to the hospital so the doctor can see it as well. It actually, the Hitchcock tracks from the time of onset of the first EKG capture to the time you're in the cath lab. There's a success time rate. And forgive me, I don't know it off the top of my head. I think it's around 30 minutes that they want to have the recognition to on the table at DH. And that facilitates us to be into that STEMI protocol. And that's just one thing that it can do. From paramedics that are doing, having to pace somebody's heart in the field, doing a cardioversion for somebody with a out of sync heart rhythm, to defibrillating somebody. It measures their end tidal CO2. So if somebody was intubated in the field and we needed to track their expiratory CO2 to make sure that we put the tube in the right hole. But that's what it's there as a safety check, so they can monitor that rhythm. Their blood oxygen level is monitored on it. I'm probably missing something, but it does their blood pressure and all those other kind of things. So it's a kind of all-in-one unit that tracks all those vital signs so that a paramedic can do treatment in the field.
Life expectancy of these units is what?
Yeah, so I asked that question because we're kind of out of the norm because we've been able to extend ours for as long as we have. So we've technically gone, over, what did I say? It was 15 years now with one. The manufacturer recommends an 8-year replacement cycle.
Thank you.
You're welcome. That is it for what I have in the operational account. I'll just move over to the reserve deposit. Reserve deposit next. So on the Fund 10, 921 of the transfers in the reserve. This year, we're asking for the same amount as last year, which is $180,994. I think the board has authorized it for quite a few years now in a row. And basically, we break that down within that fund to fund 3 separate capital reserve funds. One is the vehicle reserve account, which you just expended one on the vehicle the last meeting. One goes towards the SCBA replacement, the self-contained breathing apparatus, and the other towards the large purchases of structural firefighting gear that we do every 5 years. So that 180 goes into that current reserve and is split up into those different capital reserve funds. This year, I also did make a recommendation to the finance director and the town manager of my desire to be considered by the board for $200,000 from the lot funding. I think it might be important for us, while we can probably pull off the purchase of that ambulance that is in the ether that we've ordered, that we have no idea when it's going to arrive. I think it will impact the vehicle account and that capital reserve account almost down to zero. And I would rather that if we have lot funding available, use it to supplement that purchase, because in 2027, we'll be talking about fire truck replacement. And I know that that's going to be upwards of over $800,000 when we get there. So it'd be nice to have a down payment, at least, if not fund most of it from reserve, rather than financing. So that is my request, if the board would consider $200,000 on their list of things to do with lot. But we have been successful in the past. I think we've asked at least once or twice previously now for the voters for funding for an ambulance, and it has passed. The next line is to go over the revenue funds for the fire department. We have before you FY 23's actual. We collect fees for fire alarm monitoring. You're just, in this last budget, we just replaced the municipal fire alarm monitoring system. We charge $250 per radio box. And that is the income generated from us monitoring fire alarm systems throughout the community. Fire reports is a line that if legal, if somebody requests a report from the fire department, we charge a fee for that. In that year, we captured $15. Fire prevention had a big year in FY 23. There are a considerable amount of construction projects that happened in FY 23, and I'm anticipating some in the coming year as well. But I'm conservative in my approach as to how much we're going to guess the revenue is going to be at. But we had some relatively big projects, and that's primarily funded by the permit fee is $8 per thousand of project valuation, and then that's paid to the town, and that pays for the plans review of the entire project and almost nearly daily inspections that the fire marshal's doing, watching construction phases of new construction. Then fire reimbursements is a reimbursement account for any kind of reimbursement to the agency. Ambulance services, these are billing insurance companies and private parties, generated about $659,000 worth of revenue. And then we have contracts with 2 communities. We do a portion of North Heartland and a portion of Sharon that those communities pay us for that service to provide primary ambulance services for. So FY 23 was a big revenue. We drew, the fire department brought in $952,574 in revenue in FY 23. Next year, the current year, we're estimating 754. And then in this year, we're estimating about 807,550 in the next year for revenue from fire services. Then moving on to what we've been talking about for a while now, what a bond might look for, or some type of municipal financing for a fire station. We're hoping that the board puts forward the renovation project to turn what is that 2-bay garage building in Queechee into something that can hold staff. So Estes and Gallup gave the quote today. I emailed it to everybody, so you got to see it about the same time I did. So I haven't really gone through it a lot to review what the draft is, but this is conceptually what they based their estimate on, which is an addition to both sides of the structure and a carport area in the parking lot. The next slide shows the estimated cost for this project is $1.158 million. This would create the bunk rooms, bathrooms, fitness area on one side, common kitchen area in the back, and then business offices on one side, and also including space for HPD to have an office in that building as well. The second part of what we discussed was the storage facility at Station 1 on the V.A. Cutoff Road, which is this 6-bay storage building to the rear of the structure to house all our utility trailers and other equipment that we have to shuttle around the community in the wintertime. That can't be stored completely outside without some protection. And they estimated that at $624,000 for a total estimated both projects for $1,782,636. The only other item I think I have on my slide deck is the discussion of the community nurse. You heard from that group. We've seen some success in other areas, and I provide this for guidance from you and the town manager as to how you wish to proceed or not. But I figured that this is the average of the rates that the community nursing group provided me for a salary that you get a registered nurse for. And we projected this out to all the true costs of the town and have it about $152,618. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Manny?
Got this angle rescue course that we're looking at for 15 grand. Explain what that's gonna look like.
Yeah, so we got that quote from CMC, which is a rescue company out of California. They just did the confined space for class for us a few years ago. It was very well received by both Hanover, Lebanon, and Hartford. So our intent here, that is the full cost of the course. That we probably have an opportunity as well to offer that to other departments, other career departments, our two neighbors, that they would pay us for to help compensate for the.
But is that like a structure to do rappelling and stuff off of, or is that, what is the basic?
Yeah, no, so it starts off as a basic class. So it starts off with the basics, like how to tie a knot, how to get into your harness, the safety features of the equipment, how to tie those features. And then it actually takes you out rappelling. And then doing the dynamic systems that we use to lower people down in like the Coochie Gorge, to set up high lines to run our boats across the water, things like
I
that.
understand all that, but what is the 15 grand gonna pay for?
Oh, it pays for the instructors,
That's right, okay,
instructors and the equipment.
all right, so you
Yeah,
have a
it's-
location,
It's it would be right here in Hartford using geographic areas.
okay, that's.
Yeah.
Whatever. Right.
Yep.
Kim?
Could we look at that revenue amount, the fire prevention, in terms of if, so the 23 amount was $231,000, recognizing there was a lot of development, and if Monday's planning commission is any indication, there's gonna be quite a bit more coming
Sure.
forward. But so that line for 23 estimated was 90,000, so there was an excess of, over 200,000
Sure.
in the actual. What I'm getting at is, like, if we, like, these are significant amounts that if we are being conservative, which I certainly appreciate, is there any way to indicate or earmark that if those revenues are significantly more than anticipated and budgeted for, if it can be designated to go into the fire truck reserve or something like, is there any way to specify, I guess first question would be, what happened? Where did that excess funding go that came in from fire prevention in 2023?
I'll have to turn that over to the town manager and Gail, because we collect and transfer and I don't know where it goes.
I mean, does it just go unassigned fund balance, or is there?
Certainly ask for Gail's guidance here.
Sure. So we look at it townwide. I think that's one thing to remember is, though, although the fire department may be way over on their revenue, we may have other departments that are under. So they do offset each other, very similar to the expenses. So in the end, if there is an excess in revenue above the expenses, then that funds would be put into the unassigned fund.
So excess in revenue from fire could be applied to a deficiency in, like, public works or something like that?
Correct. And you also, this is based on what's billed, not actually what's received in cash. So it's based on the revenue amount. And every year Scott comes forward and asks for a portion. We have a look back period for writing off a piece of it as well. So I think that's the other part of it to take into consideration.
So of that 231,000 for 23 actual, we didn't necessarily receive all those
Well,
ones?
in that particular one, I was just talking in general about revenue. So in that particular one, those would be funding that the fire department actually billed and did receive the funding for.
Okay, I mean, I guess my kind of point is, I'd be interested in the potential, and I realize we're gonna come back and revisit these numbers later, but revisiting increasing that revenue amount.
We could also have a report as we go through this budget year as to a year-to-date performance. And maybe next time we'd have this discussion, we know whether Scott's been appropriately cautious or whether the income continues to outpace his estimates.
Right, but at that point, we will have made our we can't change the budget, we can't change the tax rate at that point.
No, but I'm saying between now and when you do set a budget and approve a budget, we might have reports for you that show how this is performing
For
in this
24.
current budget year.
I mean, that would be interesting. You said we're gonna get a next.
So on the 28th, you'll get your first quarter report, but certainly we'll have the information, on a monthly basis.
Yeah.
To give you the revenue amount.
Yeah, go ahead.
I just want to follow up on something that Kim asked. You stated that if there were overages, that you basically spent them on other needs within the town of Hartford. Is there a way to see where those went to? If there were needs of other departments within the town, where that money went?
You, in your book that you have your budget, you have your actual amount that was spent in 2023. And the
Right.
auditors will also be giving you a presentation of the budget to actual for
I'm
2023.
just wondering if there's a way to see where the difference in those funds went from the fire department, though. If there were money that for fire prevention that we got extra, where did that money, and we used that for other things within the budget. Is there a way to know where they went?
I think the way to look at it is there's a common pot of money, and money that's left from an unanticipated surplus goes into that common pot. There's not a direct transfer from unspent or surplus fire department revenues to go straight to the rec department, for example. It just goes in.
So we
that
can't
common
trace it
pot.
then? We
I don't
can't
think
trace
I
it.
don't think it's traced to a specific recipient, because the whole pot is the recipient of that extra surplus.
But we will know if a department needed those extra funds within the budget.
Right, because then they'd be in deficit, for example.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
that's how you
and-
fund that.
Revenue page and see like, for example, the dispatch tower rental, we anticipated $4,000 of income, but there was actually 0 in the actual. So like you can go through that list. Can I just continue one piece on that? So just.
Thank you.
And same with with the ambulance services, are the numbers we're looking at the ones prior to any of those write-offs that we do annually? So if it says 600,000, we didn't necessarily.
No, actually. I
No,
think that
the
was
number that's
actual.
here for FY 23 is after the write-off for the
After
prior
that.
years.
Okay,
No, that's fully received in that column.
great. And then John and Gil, will you help us keep track of the lot requests as they come in? So,
For sure.
at some point, will you help us determine, these are all the lot requests, local option tax requests, and that kind of thing because I've got my notes, but I don't have any
Yeah.
organized mechanism for it
Yeah.
at this moment, so, okay, great. And then, and I guess, I think that's, maybe and we'll come back to the Station 2 renovation and the storage building again, when kind of redetermining, finalizing capital projects. And Chief Cooney, if I asked you if you had to choose between one of those projects or the other, what you would.
That's an easy one, the stage.
The station, yeah, okay, thank you. That's all I have for the moment.
Okay, any questions? Rocket,
Oh,
Dan,
wait, let me.
any questions?
There is. Dan,
I have a question. So Scott, if for some reason, unfortunately, the Queechee station isn't funded, you just maintain the status quo of what's there and move it forward another year, correct?
That is correct. Yeah, we've slated to rent the trailer for another year. It's
Right.
not optimal, but yes, it is funded for another year to rent it if we need to.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Rocket, did you have something?
Let me ask okay. May I ask a question if Rocket's not there?
Yeah, I'm here. I'm just, I'm all set, just listening. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Rocket.
So
Go ahead, John.
my question had to do with the fire truck that's on the horizon, and the preference for cash purchase versus financing. Does the terms of financing go up and down with marketplace interest rates, or is there some sort of fire truck loan specialty bank that maintains historically low or even subsidized rates of financing?
There are leasing groups, which we did enter into when we, what was it 2017, 2018? Can't remember now. There was a point in between 19 and 21 where we had the need to purchase a ladder truck for $980-something thousand, and the town contributed a total of, I believe, around $125,000 in cash towards that purchase. We went out to RFP, and a company by the name of Leasing Two and Santander Bank got the award. I forget what the interest rate is. I'd have to look to Gail. But the interest rate was favorable at the time, a single digit interest rate finance, and we're paying for that ladder truck over 10 years.
I see.
So, yeah, it does make the impact less to the budget, for sure. And that's whether or not it would be the appetite of the board as to whether they choose to finance or capital. But we've tried to apply some capital each purchase because the fire apparatus is so expensive. We were, when I first started, in the 1990s, we were able to pay cash for fire engines a lot, but they were $300,000, $250,000, $300,000, and now just to get started with one, you're talking 800.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
I just want, John, can I follow up with you on the questions that I emailed just about the differences?
Oh, sure.
you recommended? And
Absolutely, yeah, yeah.
I can give you those deals if you
No,
want.
I've got them here. As to 21,109.
Salary of 46.
Yeah, that's a very specific number. I would never have generated on my own. So I'm only imagining that at some point Paula knew something about this particular position and told me what that person was scheduled to be earning. That's my only supposition as to where that number came from. The other question had to do with 315, or question 315, recruiting and training. That struck me as in keeping, my reduction struck me as in keeping with recent budget amounts and the 2023 actuals, but certainly subject to modification if Chief Cooney has more of an explanation as to that line. I tallied the numbers in his narrative, and they certainly don't add up to 44, 158, nor do they have to. But I thought to myself that given the previous budget numbers, that seemed like a pretty good jump, but maybe Chief Cooney has a good explanation for that I haven't seen yet.
No, I mean, there's a lot of fluidity to that budget because there's a lot of some unknowns. For example, we fund, the town is gracious enough to pay college reimbursement for individuals, 50% of their college tuition classes. And at the time, I have some people taking their masters and some of their bachelors and some doing their associates. So that's an unknown kind of rolling target. So I try to keep some in there for that. It pays for a lot of the travel expenses. So in the travel and meetings line is basically the reservation for the program. And then recruitment and training is paying for airline tickets, hotel rooms, all that kind of other stuff. So I kind of have to guess what those are going to be in those areas. And then we typically carry about $10,000 in there for individuals in the department that wish to take that next higher step and become paramedics, which is a 15-month-long life-altering program. And the department and the town fronts the tuition for that program and makes the employee sign a 3-year work agreement providing that benefit. So those are all in there. Yes.
I feel like that was part of the discussion during that forum at the public safety building a couple weeks ago, and that I thought they were suggesting that, and like, it was interesting to have pointed out that fire and EMS, I guess more specifically, is one of the only departments that's really reimbursement driven, right? Like everything else is sort of front-loaded funding and EMS is for some reason all reimbursement driven. And that seems problematic to begin with, but
Sure
I
does.
thought there was a big discussion around that paramedic training in that there weren't, so is that specific to the town of Hartford that there's a requirement for 3 years of, or you're, I guess, an expectation, there's a written commitment that there will be 3 years of service for compensating for that course?
Yeah, quite a few years ago, the town contracted with our attorney to develop a work agreement contract.
Okay.
So it locks that employee in, and if somebody chooses to leave within that 3-year period, it's a pro rata
They
kind
have to
of.
pay back.
Yeah, they have to pay back the
That-
portion.
So, but,
And
yeah,
as far as the state funding you're talking about, that's why when I saw the cut to that section, it didn't affect me. First of all, I didn't have anybody with their hands up right now.
Yeah.
It says they want to go to paramedic school this session. There's some people talking about it, but no concrete ones. And I did poll the organization to find out if there was anybody interested in the next fiscal year. And I do know, just like you heard the other day, that the state does have some grant funding available to pay for education for
Yeah.
paramedics. So, yeah, so when I saw the reduction, I just took it that if one, I don't have an active person that's looking for paramedic school, and two, I have an alternative option too that I can go after if that does change.
great, and that, if I can, and then we'll come back to the last one, it's okay, just quickly, even with any of the capital requests and potentially the community nurse, like has your department looked into any kind of available grant funding for those at this point?
For the program,
Well, either for the program and or the facilities, like the actual public safety
for the
buildings.
station, we do have, we've got a request out now, a grant for around $80-something thousand, I think, to do an HVAC system at public safety.
Okay,
That's out there now. I believe Dana has submitted that request. So we're hoping to get $80,000 to do something with the
Station
heating
one?
at Station 1.
Yeah.
Yeah, at Station 2, we did some cursory kind of look at what was available for grants to build a fire station, could find very little. You can go after loans and things like that through USDA and some other locations to get it, but there was no like bucket of money to go after for actual construction. We've looked at, the federal grants through the assistance to firefighter grants through Homeland Security. Hartford has had some disadvantage to applying for that. There's a specific section in the application that inquires about the community's financial need.
Oh, yes, that's.
Yeah, and that are unfortunately,
That's our
or fortunately,
disadvantage. Yeah.
it has been hard to prove financial need, financial hardship in Hartford to be accepted into that program.
Oh, sure. Tax rate keeps going up, maybe. And then that last,
Yeah, as to the last thing, I'm certainly willing to give ground on that because I do have now an extra year of actuals. And so now it doesn't look like such an outlier after all. This is 10-221-319, equipment operation and gas. I had in the previous comments talked more about the prior budget years, thinking maybe the 2023 actual was an outlier, but I see that 2022 actuals are pretty high as well. So I really wouldn't have any qualms about restoring that in full, or at least up to say 40, for example.
I know we're not making any changes now, but.
Right.
So this is one of the ones that you just finished talking about with Gail, is if I blow out my
You're gonna
fuel
take
budget,
it from
hopefully the
somewhere.
revenues are gonna
Yeah.
cover what that cost is.
Right.
And that's why I'm careful with inflating the revenues.
Yeah.
Because if I don't make a revenue, then I have to not spend something in the expenditure side to cover your revenue loss.
Mhm.
Understood.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, a comment was more so than a question, and I know we'll be coming back to look at the final numbers and overview, but I just wanted to voice my personal support of considering the community nurse position and working that in, if there was board support to consider that as well. So again, I know that we're waiting to the end to actually parse through everything holistically, but I did just want to put that on the table. I'd be curious to see how that would factor in, and of course, how that shakes out with the final tax rate and all of that. But there definitely seems like there is a a need, and it would be, I only see that need increasing, so just wanted to mention that.
Just for a point of interest, Gail and I were plugging away at some numbers over here. So we looked at, I asked her what $150,000 does to the tax rate. And her excellent math over here says, it looks like for whatever situation you might encounter, but it looks like $150,000 raises the tax rate by a penny. So any movement of 150 in any direction is a penny. It appears that way, and Gail can correct me if I'm
No, you're correct.
Okay, any other questions for Scott? Thanks, Scott.
You're welcome.
Yes, thanks.
It was 3.09%.
3.09% is what we financed the ladder truck.
Okay.
What is that?
0.09
Then it's pretty.
For what? For,
for the ladder truck,
That
the
was the
10-year
interest
note
rate.
on the ladder truck, that's what we financed it for,
okay.
3%.
Which will be paid off in 29.
29, it gets paid.
So next we'll hear the Parks and Rec proposed. budget.
Let me just ask a real quick question of finance administrator here.
Yeah.
Yeah, what do we have falling off for bonds?
I actually put a note in the debt schedule
Okay.
in each one of the bonds,
Okay.
every debt
in-
that you
in the
have
debt schedule?
listed.
In the-
So
What
if
do
you go to the end of the book,
Okay,
it has all your leases and it has all your bonds, and I actually put a note in there stating when they drop off.
okay.
Is that in the original one or just in the new one?
It should be in the,
Original one, okay.
I don't have my book
well,
tonight, so
it wouldn't change because that column didn't change.
Trying to get you all set. Scott.
somebody refresh me because I don't have my book.
What the page number is?
No, what's dropping off? I don't have my book tonight.
I haven't.
Love the animation.
So if you, I don't have them itemized out. I went line by line when I entered them. So example, the Zamboni matures in 2026. And so then if you move down to the ladder truck, it's 2029. And each one of the notes for each debt item
Yeah, I
is
don't-
there.
I can't follow you. I don't have my book at all, so.
You have it in your, in this new one,
It's
but
in this one? It is in this one?
I haven't looked, but.
I believe it is.
I can show you what, I can give you mine, as long as you're not gonna ask me about debt while Scott's sitting up here, because I'm not gonna be able to tell you. Does everybody else see it in your book?
So if you start page 82.
Yeah, maybe the
Well,
defibrillators.
and then in the narrative column, it says when it matures.
Got it. Thank you.
So, starting with the
bond
leasing
repayment?
one,
Yeah,
so
so where it
Zamboni,
says
the principal
matures
matures
date
2026.
Right where your finger is.
2029,
Okay, matures
2026,
2026.
2031,
Okay.
2026, and also if you look in your,
Okay.
each of you, if you also look in the audit that we get every year, it also lists them out as well.
Okay.
But I did put this in there, which was new this year,
Just dropping off
Very
each year.
helpful.
Then we have to
Thank you.
see what.
or you can look at the audit.
Does the town report sometimes would have listed long-term?
And that comes from the audits.
You don't know, you don't know the number, how many we have though, off the top of your head.
Not right at this particular moment. I just did the debt schedule, and I know that many of them are coming up soon. What I have to do for the audit, but I don't.
How live you, man?
I
know. Thank you. Sorry to take you, sorry to take us off track. My apologies.
All right, Scott, whenever you're ready. Floor is yours.
Same thing he said, or he should turn it. Is that you use it?
Thank you, Scott.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Oh,
he's not going far. He uploaded this for me on his computer.
no.
Mr. Chair, select board members, it's always a pleasure to be here and it's an honor to be able to come before you. And going to share with you our proposal for Parks and Recreation Department. This includes all the codes that are in the presentation there from 511, which is administration, all the way to 531, which is the Amtrak. But we'll try to go through this quickly after a few slides. Hopefully this works. It does. Our mission and vision statement, I think, is important for us to share with you. This is reviewed annually by the Park and Recreation Commission, as well as staff on an annual basis. This is a requirement for us too, as we are the only nationally accredited park and recreation agency in the state of Vermont. So we take a lot of pride in that. We're one of about 400 agencies across the country that go through this process. Our reaccreditation process will not be this coming year, but our next fiscal year will be our turn to go through our 5-year review. But it keeps us on top of things, as well as it's a accountability for the agency, as well as making sure that we are offering the services to the standards, national standards that are set forth for us. Here's the organizational chart. We have 8 full-time personnel. So the darker visions of the images identifies the departments as the director. I have 2 superintendents, or you have 2 superintendents. One is for recreation programs, the other is parks and facilities. We have an administrative assistant, full-time in the budget presentation. Be sharing with you our intent to bring on up to 20 hours a week part-time to assist us with a lot of our park permit process, as well as arena operations and scheduling and billing, which takes a considerable amount of time. But I'll be sharing with you how we're going to plan on, we'd like to plan on funding those positions, or that position. Recreation specialist for programming, and then we have our superintendent of parks, which I mentioned earlier, and 2 crew leads and a laborer, and then multiple seasonal employees for pools and camps, and volunteers and all are listed within this structure. Parks and facilities, as you know, for our agency is something we're very proud of. We have 19 listed facilities. They're not all major parks, but this gives you an idea of those parks that we maintain and take care of. As it's always important to identify Kilowatt North and South. It's operated by, or it's owned by Great River Hydro. Obviously, we have a long-term lease to operate that as a recreational facility. So that's one facility we're certainly very proud of. And then obviously our facilities such as the Maxfield Sports Complex, the aquatic facility, and some of our major parks in the community are kind of level 1 park facilities that we maintain on a regular basis. Some of the others are more, monitored on a lower scale, not as active, so therefore they don't require a lot of maintenance. We offer a lot of park activities, park and recreation activities, arts, entertainment, special events, STEM programs, that sort of thing. This gives you an idea of all the programs or special events that we've done throughout the course of the past fiscal year and continue to do on a regular basis. Obviously, the 4th of July, some of our running events and special holiday events are very popular for us. And something the community really enjoys being a part of, as well as quality of life issues. It's nice, engaging opportunities for everybody to get together as a community and celebrate our quality of life here in Hartford. Programs are a big piece of our operation. We'll talk a little bit later about some of the, or that particular budget line item. But a lot of our youth sports, leagues, classes, camps, that sort of thing is a big component of what we do. So recreation programming like parks are a big piece of our operation. So it gives you an idea of some of those activities and all that we do take care of it. Pickleball happens to be still year 2, the most engaged program that we offer. The Sherman Manning Aquatic Facility this past fiscal year,
or this current fiscal year. One thing to keep in mind, this is a operation that crosses 2 fiscal years. So this gives you an idea of our operation for this past year, this past season, June 10th through August 26th. We had 11 weeks of operation, 53 scheduled hours per week, and 70 days the pool was open. Weather was a factor this year. We closed six days. We didn't even open, and 11 of those 70 days we closed early. So a total number of memberships that were sold, these are family memberships. It might be a seasonal pass for a youth or adult, or a family membership of 4. One additional person in the family pays a little extra money. 153 those memberships are sold. Daily transactions are those that just walked in the door to visit the pool. And then our recreation program usage attendance, and that is tabulated based on like our own programs. So the camp, when they come and visit and they bring 80 kids 3 or 4 or 5 days a week. And pool parties, that type of thing. So as you can see, it was pretty active, even though the weather conditions were not the best quality for an outdoor pool this past season. Past fiscal year, just to kind of give you an idea of how busy we actually are. Total number of classes and activities were offered were 296. Those requiring a registration engaged over close to 4,000 individuals. Out of those first-time registration folks that registered for the very first time for a program was 482. Gives you an idea of all the total transactions that we had. Again, pickleball was very popular, and this past fiscal year, the fiscal year itself, we provided $5,180 in program scholarships. That comes out of the Brian Hansen Scholarship Fund. All of that revenue comes, not all, sometimes we do receive just general donations for our scholarships. Large percentage, probably about 98%, I guess, of all in our scholarship fund comes from the Brian Hansen Scholarship Fund, where we do the parking at the Quechee Balloon Festival. So we asked for donations, and this past year, I think it was close to $6,000. The weather was really bad. Year before, I think we were around 12,000 that went into the scholarship account. So. And then we go through an application process, and folks can apply for a scholarship. It could be a pool pass, it could be a pass to the ice arena, or it could be a week of camp, recreation program, and it's very successful. We'd like to see more folks take advantage of it because the funding is available to us. In our parks and facilities, we saw a dramatic increase in facility reservations, a total of 1,212 facility reservations. So this is when somebody calls and says, I'd like the bandstand, I'd like to reserve a room at the arena for a birthday party during the ice season. It could be a number of things, reservation at the bandstand, and then also internal reservations. So reservations that we take for concerts at the park or field usage. It's tabulated, so we identify the number of reservations that we take for all of our programs as well as for public use. Number of hours, 6,357 hours. So just gives you an idea of how much your parks are used during the park season, which is pretty remarkable, I think. And it engaged a total of 43,000 folks. On our reservations and also in our programs, we identify the population. So this can be little, maybe high, maybe low. It all depends on those that are filing for a permit to use a particular park for a program or for an event. If they say
they're going to have, up to 50 people, we'll identify 50 folks for this permit. If they only have 25, we're not tracking that as a follow-up. But based on reservations that folks make for parks and facilities, as well as reservations that we permit for our programs, which we do based on registrations, it's relatively pretty accurate. And this is another one that I like to share every year for you, because I think it's so important to show how amazing our volunteers are and volunteering time. But we tabulate as best we can volunteer hours and those volunteers to participate with us. That equated to, based on the 2023 Vermont volunteer hourly rate, of $146,000 value to the town of Hartford. So we can't function 100% and do all the great things that we do in our parks as well as our programs without our volunteers. So not only the dollar amount that shows the value that they provide to us, but just the quality that they bring to our programs on a regular basis. So we thank them. I wanted to share just some of the guidance that was presented by the select board. I'm not going to go through each one, but I just, we do take it seriously when we receive the budget guidance for each fiscal year. And this gives you an opportunity to read through how we pair your suggested guidance with what we do to serve in the public. So several budget highlights here. Obviously, we're asking for reserve fund deposits as we continue to operate. We also continue to prepare ourselves for unknowns or things that might occur that we need to upgrade a facility on a regular basis. So WABA, we're asking for a continued contribution into the reserve account of $35,000. Same with the playground program. We want to continue that at $25,000 and the $10,000 for the pool reserve. I think in the future we'll be looking at trying increasing the pool one, but right now it gives us a good start so we can establish a base when unknowns kind of come and creep up on us during a budget season. The reserve transfer in 521, which is our parks, we agreed not to transfer in 24 and 25 because we received all that great revenue from ARPA to purchase and upgrade the electric mowers and the skid steers. So those were planned, purchases, and therefore we don't need to contribute, but we will be asking us in FY25 to reestablish that transfer, 26, I'm sorry, to restart the, to start building that balance back up again. There will be some requests. There's a reserve balances right now. We do have some equipment that we'll be looking at purchasing in FY25. But we're not asking for a transfer based on that agreement. All of our line items with salaries and wages, which are identified here, 511 through 530, throughout the whole operational budget, there's increases, and there's another chart I'll be showing you here pretty soon that'll give you, the budgeted amount and of FY24 in comparison to what we're asking for this year and the difference. But the equates to about $110,000 of a net cost increase. And when I say net cost increase, I'm talking about the budgeted amount and then our estimated revenues for the entire year, and then that bottom line increase overall, and what that impact will be for our operation. So most of the increases, when we go through it, you'll identify a lot of that has to do with the increases in salaries and wages and some contracted services and that type of thing that has increased our budget. The pool's pretty stable. It's probably going to be another 2 to 3 years. And I always look to Gail to, give me a good idea. Hey, what do you think? How close are we here? But it's going to be a few more years before we really have a good idea of the true expense and revenue based on estimates in the past. Weather has to be a big factor, of how people utilize the facility. Obviously, that's in this revenue, but then it's also expenses because you're not paying those wages on those days that the pool's closed, that sort of thing. So it's really a moving target that we're not quite sure, but we should be able to do a good analysis, in a couple years to give us a good idea of what we really should be budgeting for, or true actual. But it shows about a 0.5% increase. And the program budget, which again is, one of our bigger line items. Most of that is equates to, those increases that I mentioned. Cost recovery, when we look at things this year, it's about a 50% cost recovery. I anticipate that to be a little bit more as the programs develop and increase. Based on numbers of people participating, like our after-school programs, for example. Also, you see kind of an increase here is because in FY24, our expenses were offset by some encumbrances, and I've got that in a couple of line items as well. So even though it's a $42,000 increase, you got to realize in FY24 we used some encumbrances for some expenses, so we're kind of recoup that now. 521 Parks. Again, it's one of those, some of the personnel issues are not issues, not all. They're great things. But personnel benefits and numbers. This is where we are parking 10 hours of some part-time admin. As you saw earlier in our permits and the number of hours of use of the park, you can kind of gather how busy we are. I think Karen was in today to do a little bit of work. We're still kind of training Margaret, who's the admin in the office now, and I think throughout the entire day there was 5 permits that she worked on. So even this time of year, we're dealing with permits that are ahead of time that need to be addressed and taken care of. But we're looking at about 10 hours a week in the 521 as well as in 530, which is the rink dealing with the reservations of the facility as well as the dealing with the permit usage and billing for the operation. Programs and the WABA, so are our key revenue generators for the whole department. Maxfield, there's some increased hourly rate there based on our need to be able to hire somebody at a reasonable rate of pay. We got to go back to when trying to think. I've lost the name of it, but the corrections officers, not the correction officers, but the corrections folks.
Inmates.
Yeah, there you go. Thank you, sir.
No problem.
We used to have about 7 that would work out at Maxfield with the corrections officer to do a lot of maintenance of the park facility once it was open for several years until they closed the program. I think it was a Windsor program.
Springfield, I
work
think.
Release program. So
Springfield,
yeah, it's a work release program, which worked really well. Ever since then, it's been very difficult to get 80 hours of support, staff support. As you know, last year we did add a laborer to the position that cut that back. So now it's about 40 hours a week is what we really need out there.
We hire a few people occasionally to help us, some of the Nighthawk kids there to help with field maintenance and all. But we have a dire need to maintain and keep up with what's going on out there. But we need to raise the rate in order to attract somebody to work April through November. So that's an increase within the 527 budget. Other than that, that's about it out in Maxfield. Want to talk a little bit about CIP and our Lyman Point Park project. So to give you kind of a timeline, a snapshot of what maybe what we're going through right now. I mean, staff and the community of stakeholders have communicating and meeting occasionally. We do have a meeting on the 20th of November just with some of the stakeholders to talk about the RFP development that we're putting forward to obtain some civil expertise to address some of the layout and design of what we can do and what maybe we can't do at Lyman Park. But again, this is our project that will restore the playground to a more accessible, inclusive play space for the community, improving some of the picnic areas, as well as a safe and accessible path that will connect Lyman East and West, is what we call it, with an overlook area for people to enjoy, a raised canopy along the White and Connecticut rivers. So we're pretty excited about this, and so is the community that we've been talking to that will be at this meeting on the 20th, and we'll be sending out a notice here pretty soon about that meeting with some of the stakeholders. But this gives you kind of a timeline of what we're requesting. We've got 100,000 in reserve for the project to get things kicked off. The balance of that and the timeline of how we go about the project. We're developing an RFP that we're planning to send out to get some of that expert civil work that needs to be done to address, the whole pretty much layout of what we're looking at doing, and then the review process of who might send their RFP in. We plan on between November and December, and hoping that in January through March, some working groups and begin, obtaining input from the community, working with those stakeholders to really identify exactly what it's all going to be and how it's all going to work out based on the concept. And then obviously we hope to have funding secured so we can fund the entire project and start working on that starting in April. And working through the month of June with a potential fall winter project start. Completion's kind of undetermined because weather conditions and what actually we are able to, what we plan on doing for some of the site work will determine when that can be done and how long that would take. By the numbers, what we kind of reviewed, the FY25 request is kind of highlighted there in a box for you. Compared to FY24, the difference is there on the right. As you can see, there's in program admin, that's the 511 account, which is the administration of the Park and Recreation Agency. A $24,000 increase. Outdoor pool, like we mentioned, was very slight increase there. Youth programs is looks about a $42,000 increase in operational costs. Some savings in the adult programs. One thing to keep in mind with the 515 adult program is most of that is revenue generated. So this is based on the type of programs that we offer
and the revenue that potentially comes in. So there's limited anticipation of having to buy additional equipment and all soccer goals for adult soccer, or we utilize the schools a lot. There's not a lot involved in indoor futsal and those types of things. So the expense is pretty limited there, but it does help us pay for individuals that might help us with open gyms and that type of thing. We give stipends out, but we'll decrease there. Community activities, not much of an increase. Park maintenance, you're seeing it there. Most of that is in the payroll line and benefits. There's potential, I think. Nope, it's all just the. I thought there was some equipment in there, but there's not. Barwood Arena has a slight increase. One thing to keep in mind with Barwood and 521 with Parks is the payroll and salaries for both of those particular line items are split 50-50. So the staff and the parks obviously move over to the arena. So it's 6 months of park budget, 6 months of arena operations. Amtrak's kind of is a wash. We do make a little bit of money off of that. That is based on an PO with Amtrak. They pay the town an allotment of money to be the caretakers of the Amtrak station. So that happens to be channeled into my operation. So we maintain some volunteers as well as some part-time folks over there to greet and say goodbye to those that are leaving on the Amtrak train 7 days a week. We have some good folks that work over there, but generally the cost to operate that is less than what we get from the Amtrak PO, which is a good thing. So total expenses, we're looking at 1.721 thousand, difference of $127,000 total. When we start talking about revenue, when you take the revenue estimate of this year, $559,000, we're looking at a $1.16 million operating budget. So up about after revenues up $110,000. There's my nice little curtain. I want everybody to see that. This just kind of gives you an idea of the Park and Recreation Department. It's when I say net cost, it's less, the revenue. So what we're asking the taxpayers to pay out of pocket for Park and Recreation services. And then other services, which is, all the other departments within the town after revenues, what that cost is. So it's about a 6.025% of the overall proposed tax collection or funds to be raised by taxes for Parks and Recreation. So that's all I got.
Questions? Lenny?
524 West Hartford Community Covenant Library. $13,100 for operating expenses for that building.
So that is for the building operation itself. There is about a $2,000 increase in contracted services for the building is a change there. But yes,
that's heat, water, electric.
That's a very efficient building for heat and electricity. Yeah, it really is.
It just seems staggering that we can operate for that little bit of money. So.
Yeah, so we maintain the building. We pay for the cleaning service. We do have it power washed annually, maintaining kind of painting needs to be done, elevator inspections, the boiler inspection, all that type of stuff.
I'm shocked that we could operate it for that little amount of money. So.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm always amazed about the heat. I wish it was my house.
So, yeah. Okay.
Minimal
Thank
cost.
you. That's the only question I had.
Mary?
Yeah, Scott, how do you determine what a program's going to cost the public? The only reason I'm saying this is because we have a pickleball court near where I live. There's actually a lot of people who say, they also use Maxfield. They say, we think you're too low on asking people to pay for pickleball.
Yeah.
And so
Right.
I was just wondering how you determine.
So, park usage, it's philosophical, right? As a taxpayer, you're paying for your public parks, right? You're paying for the use and service and all. Programmatically, you want people to be able to afford and be able to use the parks, right? So our permits, costs for permits are relatively minimal, or if some of them are no dollars. Because it's important for us to encourage folks to utilize what they're paying for. As far as pickleball, it's a minimal cost to equipment and supplies. We're not necessarily paying anybody to supervise it. We have volunteers that kind of oversee it and manage it. So we'll look at the cost. We'll determine if we need to buy some new nets and equipment, and if we can't get somebody to fund it, or then we buy it out of the budget, or we plan for the expense. But that's part of our drop-in program. So you either pay, I think it's $3 or $2 or $3.
$20 for a pass.
So a pass, yeah.
Yeah.
So you buy a pass and you can come and go whenever you want.
Right.
So
Right.
yeah. So it's not our intent to we could probably. I guess I would look at it, if we're ready to build another 6 or 8 pickleball courts, then at that point in time, we're at we need to put a solution in place to help us offset that cost a little more. But we look at expenses, we look at time, and what it takes for us to manage and manage the program, advertise, promote the program, which that program doesn't require much at all. So we look at that, and then take a look at other drop-in type of programs and put a fee to it. So.
Okay. And then the last question I had was, I don't know how you calculate this, but are you going to track the possible savings for using the new mowers with? I mean, I don't know how you do that, but
yeah,
let's guess. I know.
Yeah. Honestly, our fuel costs for mowers had been pretty minimal anyway.
Yeah, right.
It doesn't cost us a whole heck of a lot.
Yeah.
And I think the whole going electric is not necessarily just the costs related to it. It's a lot of it is like it's the right thing to do.
Right. It's the philosophy.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
It's allowing us to maybe do some maintenance a little closer to the general public, or in a park when something else is going on. You don't have to worry about the fumes and things of that nature. But we'll track it. We don't have a specific meter set up at the arena specifically that's where we charge the equipment, or out at Maxfield. So we'll look at the Maxfield electric and see if we can decipher maybe cost, but that's information that we can get from Toro, for example, of what they anticipate a 6-hour, 8-hour charge actually would cost you based on your kilowatt hours. So that's something that we will probably implement. Fuel wise, we'll use less fuel.
Yeah.
Some of our parks, this particular year, we've had to spend a lot of time bagging grass because we can't keep up with some of it. So the electric mowers, after we purchased them, maybe weren't used as much at some of our key parks where we'd like people to see us doing it. Like here in Veterans, we spend a lot of time bagging the clippings. But if things would slow down, you'd probably see them out a little in town, that type of thing, a little more.
Great. Thank you.
I did speak to Dana about that and asked him if there was a way we could put a wattage meter on the charging stations to see how many watts they're using to determine the cost of recharging. He said it's something he was going to look into. So it'd be interesting to find out the actual cost of recharging them and the cost of maintenance over a period of a couple of years too, so. It's still up in the air at this point.
There's a lot of less moving parts. I can guarantee you that. There's less maintenance on it for filters and bearings and oil filter, air filters, those types of things. PTO, the hydraulics are different, running off the, not necessarily the hydraulics, but the spindles and the bearings and everything that goes out on some of those mowers that are used on a regular basis. We're talking about the tires and the bearings on the rims and the tires. We're talking about the motors that are electric motors that are running the mowing deck. Other than that, there's not much. Not much.
A lot quieter.
A lot quieter. The only thing that the crew has been complaining about is this time of year that it's much colder operating and mowing outside because normally you would have the heat of the mower behind you. So during the summer, it's probably going to be a real benefit, and during the wintertime, it's going to be something that they don't appreciate as much.
Extra jackets.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, kind of to follow up on what Mary was asking about, like the fees charged and stuff. I was also surprised at so the Maxfield revenues and the park rent, are those the only two revenue sources from, like, when people reserve the parks? Like, it just seems like a tiny amount of money when it's like, when we talk about permit. So I'm looking at lines 10,060,518 and 10,060,521. Because the presentation talks about 111% increase in permits.
Yeah.
And how is it, or am I missing, is there other?
Excuse me. So no, those are, park rent and then Maxfield revenues are the two related to our park facilities. So in FY23, it was $4,600 for Maxfield and $1,600 for the park. So a lot of our fee schedule. So when you look at that again, and I don't have it right in front of me, but several years ago, we proposed and dropped the fees dramatically to make it easier for folks to want to rent some space or get a permit. A lot of the open space, when we do a permit, for example, if you just want to come to Lyman Park, you're not going to use the playground, you just want to use a picnic table, or we like to track that just so we have an idea of folks, how many people are using it, right? We don't want to make it difficult for them. Oh gosh, I got to come in a permit, and now you tell me I got to pay $5 for a picnic table or what have you. So a lot of the costs for a lot of our permits are $0. If you want to reserve a ball field out at Maxfield, and you want the field groomed and lined, then there's a fee associated to that. Or if you're using the lights at Maxfield on the baseball field or softball field, there's a cost associated to that.
Does the school district rent any of those? So
the school district does not rent any of our space. Neither do we rent any of their space.
Okay.
The pavilions, if you want to rent the pavilion, you can get a permit and rent the pavilion for $15 for a 4-hour period of time. So, or you want to have something and you want to use it, take your chance at not having anybody at
Like a
the
reservation.
facility.
Right,
Yeah. Reservation. Courts, $5 a court for a 2-hour time block, I think is what we particularly charge. So open space is really no charge, but any of the spaces that you want for like a field for a game, you want to have a party at one of the pavilions, that type of thing. That's pretty much where the revenue is coming from, specific to Maxfield. So And we don't charge ourselves,
Yeah.
for things, so, yeah.
The, like some departments, like Parks and Rec and Public Works, it's like there's all these individual separate sections, so we don't actually have like a total Parks and Rec, except for like in your presentation, so those all add up to what the total Parks and Rec. So does that, like in some of the other ones, I was able to go through and say like, oh, total fire department, total finance.
Yeah.
Look at the percent increase
Yeah.
in the budget, so this
Right.
looks like about 9% increase, does that sound?
I think
about
so, yeah. Yeah,
right?
and then, once you take the revenue away now.
No, that was after revenue,
yeah.
like I was basically looking at that
Okay.
final line.
Yep.
In the, yeah, pink, sorry, let me make this.
And then, revenue for like the arena, that certainly is a different philosophical example.
Oh, right.
We charge per hour of ice. We have prime time and non-prime time ice. And those particular charges are really based on recouping 100% of the operational cost of that sheet of ice during that time. So, you're not paying, you're not able to, we would be out, we couldn't at a 6-month operation be able to recoup 100% of the ice arena operation.
Yeah.
Because it's a year-long building and it has cost for an entire year.
Gotcha, yeah, and that one has substantially
Right.
more.
Right.
In there.
Right.
The, okay, I think I got my head around that. Was it the one question that I had sent about an increase in life insurance for 2 Parks and Rec accounts? Was that maybe just a weird typo or something?
I never got to
I-
the final end of it.
So I can answer that. So number, just to go back, Scott's increase for his total department is 7.9%.
What was that? What's that calculation? I was just trying to figure out which.
So if you take the town manager budget, which is the 1721 and change, less what the 24 budget was a 1.59.
I'm sorry, I'm not following you. I'm looking at these totals.
Yeah, I have the ability to run the actual
Okay,
ones. So
tell me what numbers are you using for the calculation?
So 511 all the way through 531.
Yeah.
If you take the town manager column,
Which is what number? The 1161,603.57?
it's the town manager's proposed budget for Parks and Recreation.
Is there a total?
Column 5.
What page are you on?
I have my own report. I don't have you guys.
I mean, is there, I didn't think there was a total
I keep my own,
Parks and Rec total for us in our books, is that?
not the new,
Okay.
not the new formatting.
That's fine, so can I have the actual number you're using?
Yeah, sure. So 1,721,343.57.
Okay.
And that's what it is for 25. And then for 24, it's the 1,594,141.10.
Okay, so I was doing the same calculation, but with the net numbers.
Yeah,
And so somehow that comes up to 9% instead of 7 point.
I have 7.9%.
It's,
And that's just the raw numbers. That's before
Yeah.
the revenue or
Yeah.
anything like that.
okay.
And then as far as the life and AD&D goes, in fiscal year 24, we rolled them all up into the one GL code. And when the budget was put together, this one, it was just simply missed. So the lines 270 in every budget townwide should be 0. And only numbers in 240. Which is the life insurance.
Oh, so just.
And when I say 240, that's the third segment of your GL code that you're looking at.
Yep. And so in Parks and Rec, are there amounts in the 270 that you took out and put in that one?
They should be all zeroed out in 270 and added to 240, and that will give you your new number. because we combined them to
I
make
see.
Yeah.
billing, for the individuals who are
right
doing the
there.
billing, make it easier because they go to the same account, versus just trying to continually split them out and have an extra line for each department.
Thanks. Perfect.
So that will be a minimal change that line will be zeroed out and the number will be pushed up to that number, to the line above.
That explains it perfectly.
Yes.
And I guess the last thing kind of skimmed over that $30,000 for beautification.
Oh, yeah.
Afterwards. I guess.
How did I miss that one?
Right.
Yeah, so I did put in 521, the contracted services. So my proposal was to put in $30,000 for a beautification program. And I think in conversations with Gail and John, it was a placeholder to have a conversation. I've been involved, meaning that I've been asked on, with Lori and I've worked together. We've talked about it. I've kind of helped, and wherever I could, we provided some containers and all. I did some research with Hanover and Lebanon on what they've been doing for downtown beautification. I know it's been a topic that folks have been talking about. So I think the best case example would be to try to figure out a dollar amount to try to fund, and $30,000 to me was appropriate enough to do a couple things. One, it could be a contracted services that after purchasing for $5,000 worth of wicking plants, would be the person that might go around the community and maintain those pots. They only have to be watered a couple times a week versus sometimes daily. So there's less maintenance. They're used in about 850 communities across the country right now, and they're a valuable wicking plant that could either be hung or it could be something that sits on the sidewalk. Who knows what it could be? And then a balance of that could be used for purchasing some of the flowers seasonally, as well as hiring a contractor maybe to manage and maintain it. That same $30,000 I think would be appropriate amount to do the same with purchasing some of the pots and maybe some of the flowers, and then hiring somebody that would work seasonally, part-time, from spring, early spring into the fall, doing the same thing that a potential contractor would do based on some of the numbers that we got from Lebanon and Hanover. However, Lebanon and Hanover, there are volunteer groups that are working there too, but I suspect that same type of program could be established. So really I think we're at a point where, we've talked a lot about what could be done in downtown White River Junction. Can it also transfer to some of the other villages? I'm sure they could. I think you're at a point where we've got a lot of good ideas, but we really need to pull the trigger on something. And so that's where I put that placeholder in there to hopefully see where that might go. I don't know if it's necessarily appropriate to be in my budget, other than we would support and help however we could, but I think it needs to be in streets and roads or its own little beautification committee or something like that could utilize the funds in whatever capacity is identified. So
I just would strongly advocate for getting some plan of motion, because even after the South Main Street construction last summer, we were like, okay, there's not as much green space as was indicated on the site plans. Like, it doesn't look the same. And that was kind of like, well, when they started to dig, there were places that you couldn't plant and that kind of thing. And so there have been efforts for months to kind of say, okay, well, what can we do? And I think, really in looking at surrounding towns in the Upper Valley, like, you know, there's gonna be more construction with that town square parking lot, hopefully next summer. I think if there is an effort to put in, I would advocate also even for just contracting for someone to develop a plan, to maintain it, you know, basically like contract it out unless DPW or Parks and Rec had the capacity for it. I mean, I can imagine that you might not. And I think it is also the kind of thing that could be another local option tax consideration for at least a preliminary design of streetscapes throughout the villages, maybe starting in downtown White River Junction. But it could also be another thing that ongoing funding could come from parking meters if and when they finally get implemented. Like, I think there is a strong desire for, you know, we've had increased development over the last couple of years, but it is a cement landscape in the downtown right now. And Scott was super instrumental in just getting those few big pots that are out there now. And it's like the Hartford Garden Friends who've been deadheading and watering them on a volunteer basis, but some organized effort to really next level that I think would be very much appreciated by the whole community at large.
Mary?
Scott, do you know, because you said you've checked with some of these towns, do the garden clubs play a partial role in some of this? Are they just volunteer, or do they get some pay? Because obviously, you know, I lived in Hanover for 23 years, and I saw the places where, and it always said, you know, the little plaque or something saying the garden club provided this, but I didn't know if that meant they actually did it voluntarily or they took care of it through a little.
I think there's a mix of it. Honestly, I can't remember. It's been a while, but John Sherman in Hanover and over in Lebanon, you know, their programs had a mix of it, and I do have what they use. I'm happy to share that, and John can pass it on to you folks, just so you can see what kind of expenses and what revenues. I think they generate, you know, revenue through donations and that sort of thing.
And they actually have plant sales throughout at certain times. Yeah.
Right.
I think the Hanover Garden Friends might be a little more robust than, I mean, the Hartford Garden Friends do exist and they're, but I don't know that they have like, I know a couple of people who are members and they struggle to just kind of keep up with what they've got coming. So I don't know that they could lead it, but they could definitely supplement something.
Right.
They might.
Yeah, just another comment versus a question. And I know we'll look at all of this holistically at the end, but the select board got a request, an H quarter request for $2,500 for Juneteenth. When right now in the budget, it's only $2,000, which I know is what it's been for. I think that's what we earmarked for this upcoming or now in fiscal year. And that's because they anticipate doing more. Celebration might get bigger to include not just Lebanon, but Hanover with some additional costs. So again, if that would be supported by the board and to be considered as we look at that holistically, going back, I just wanted to mention that because they sent that request just into the select board. So I don't think it didn't reach you. Yeah.
Right.
So.
Right. Yep.
Any other questions for Scott?
Just one more. I mean,
Okay,
like, your department is always so impressive and valuable to the town. I just want to express
Thank you.
I'm sure I speak for the board when we are really grateful to have the leadership in the department and the fact that, like, you know, I had a question about the advertising costs and the fact that, like, there is as much engagement and participation in the Parks and Rec program without paid advertising is a just testament to how valuable those programs are. So thank you for that.
I do have just one thing, Scott. Well, basically, I guess two. Are you still utilizing Parks and Rec to do town cemeteries?
So we have non-active cemeteries. So in the park budget, there's a line item there for the non-active ones. So we mow them. I think our biggest challenge, and there is a reduction in the budget by a couple $1,000s this year, because we generally use it to pay for a little gas and do some tree work if something happens. We can't find anybody to do stonework, stone restoration, that type of thing.
Okay. Yeah.
That's a huge thing. Art Peel, would come in every year and say, okay, we're gonna need X amount of dollars because I'm gonna do X, Y, and Z stone work and all of that. He's, no longer able to do that work. So,
Right. What about Christian Street Cemetery?
so that is managed out of the town manager's office because that's an active cemetery
Okay.
right now. So
Who is
that-
mowing that though? That's
there's a-
contracted then?
There's a contractor doing
Okay,
that,
yeah.
yeah.
I just want to remind the board that cemeteries did approach us and we should be looking into cemetery commissioner at some point in time. So I'll leave it at that.
Mary?
And I just want to, I don't want to take up much time, but I want to reiterate what Kim just said, because I know as liaison to Parks and Rec, one of the things that I really admire about Scott is that he's always talking about beautifying our villages and towns. And so he looks around and he sees things. He says, I want people to come in to see what a beautiful place we have. So thank you for that.
I'll let everybody know.
Gail?
Ally, I just wanted to make sure, so the 2,000 to the 2,500 is in the 516,318 GL is what?
Yep.
Okay,
Contract
just for future conversation, I want to make sure that I got the right GL code.
Yeah, thank you, Joe.
Rocket or Dan, do you have any comments or questions?
Dan's good.
I'm good, thank you.
Just list.
So Dan's good. Rocket, what were you saying?
I'm also good.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Scott.
All right,
And
thank
thank
you.
you, Gail, for your help during both presentations. Thank you, John. All right, our next item, this is one that came up last meeting about the welcoming community cohort, and I think we held off on it just so we could finally figure out who we're actually moving to the welcoming committee cohort. Kim, did you want to give us just a quick update on?
Sure.
So it's you and John and then a third person.
Yeah, and also because I didn't have the draft of the letter of support ready either. So so that is here and it's available for people to sign. John has said he's willing to participate. I'm willing to participate. It is still open if any other incumbent board members or who will be incumbent in March, if that's the right terminology. I'm happy to defer, but otherwise I'll participate. And Connie Kelly has also expressed interest in participating. So if there are no objections, we could just do those motions and approve it, or if there's any questions or.
Anyone have any questions or comments on this? Otherwise, I'll take a motion. Helen?
So first, Mr. Chair, I move that the select board approve the letter of interest in participating in the 2023 VLCT Welcoming and Engaging Communities Cohort.
These all separate motions.
Okay, do them together. I'll do them together.
Yeah,
Let's do it. I also move that the select board delegate Kim Souza clerk to complete and submit the application for participation in the 2023 VLCT Welcoming and Engaging Communities Cohort, and that we approve participation in the VLCT cohort by town manager John Haverstock, select board member Kim Souza, and deputy chief Connie Kelly, if the program application is accepted by the VLCT Equity Committee.
Okay, do I have a second?
I'll second the motion.
Mary will second. Is there any discussion? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye. Sorry. Oh, okay, yeah, Rocket and Dan are both yes.
Okay,
Danny, did you say yes?
Actually, yeah.
Okay, so we're-
all right,
I said aye.
Thank you.
so that works. All right, no consent agenda. So the next is executive session. We have two motions that we need to vote on to go into executive session, so I'm happy to take the first motion. All right, Mary?
I move to find that there are two, do I say the select board moves? Or I'm personally.
Move that the select board.
I move that the select board find that there are two pending legal matters involving the town and premature general public knowledge would clearly place the town and or other persons at a substantial disadvantage.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
I have a second from Ally. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Yeah, I got these two. Dan and Rocket, I'll send you a link, okay?
Okay, and then we have a second motion.
I'll do it again.
All right, Mary.
I move that the select board go into executive session to discuss attorney-client communications made for the purpose of providing professional legal services as set forth in one V.S.A. section 313A 1F.
We have a second.
I will second.
Ally will second. Any discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, we go into executive session.
Here, and I'll give it to John.
Ooh.
No, no.
So you got the minutes?
Yeah.
Okay.
But I don't.
There you go.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
I'm glad you caught that.
Yeah.
So I'll take a motion.
I
to
use up a
come-
lot of paper reading.
Mr. Chair, I move that we come out of executive session.
Can I have a second?
I'll second the motion.
Mary will second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Yeah.
Aye.
Dan, okay, and we've lost Rocket, or is Rocket on Zoom, Nick?
No.
Okay,
No,
so.
Should we call the roll?
Yeah.
Yeah, let's do
Unanimous
it.
of people here.
We should.
Lanny,
Aye.
Rocket, not there. Ally,
Aye.
Mary,
I,
Dan. Kim,
Hi,
and I'll vote aye.
we don't have to name ourselves, right?
No, you're okay. All right, so we were out of executive session. We'll take a second motion. Ally,
Mr. Chair, I move that the select board approve and sign a recommended letter written by attorney Brian Monahan in a confidential employment matter.
okay, so hold on, move that the select board approve and sign a letter.
A recommended letter written by attorney Brian Monahan
Okay, this one. Uh-huh.
in a confidential employment matter.
do I have a second?
Second the motion.
Any discussion? Call the roll. Lanny,
Aye.
Rocket, Ally,
Aye.
Mary,
Aye.
Dan.
Hi.
Kim,
Hi,
and I will vote aye. I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
If we have a second,
Sure, I'll second the motion.
okay, so Lanny moved to adjourn, Mary seconded. Any discussion? Okay, I'll call the roll. Lanny,
Aye.
Rocket, Ally,
Aye.
Mary,
Aye.
Dan. Kim,
hi,
and I will vote aye. Thanks.
all right, bye, Dan.
Bye, Dan.
Bye, everyone, thank you, Dan. Oh, it's good.
Oh, yeah, what do you have in there? Can I need,
Do you need something?
I need something.
No, wait, I actually had, because that's all, I got peanut butter.